That's right, I'm talking about Spider-Man again. Now, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that I love Spider-Man. There's just something really appealing to me about a nerdy scientist named Peter. Don't know why. And with a new movie coming out, I figure why not make a video about the character? But that's beside the point. I want to take the time to look at the MCU's Peter Parker and how he has had to deal with imposter syndrome. And no, I'm not just making this video as an excuse to watch a bunch of Marvel movies. I'm also making this video to procrastinate on my grad school applications. Before jumping into how Spider-Man deals with imposter syndrome, I think it would be a good idea to actually cover what imposter syndrome is. Imposter syndrome is used to describe someone who is generally successful in their endeavors, but they feel like a fraud in some way and attribute their success to external factors. A major component of imposter syndrome is the fear of being discovered, and is often linked with other mental illnesses like depression and anxiety. I also want to mention that a key aspect of avoiding imposter feelings comes from social support. Being supported by classmates, parents, teachers, and close friends can be very helpful and beneficial to reducing these feelings. And as far as I can tell, imposter syndrome is related to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, you've probably seen this chart. It usually plots experience versus confidence, and shows that someone with very little experience will be initially overconfident in their ability. Once more experience is gained, their confidence plummets and stays low until they have enough experience to bring their confidence back up and stabilize it. I'm somewhat unsure if the Dunning-Kruger effect refers to the entire graph or just that initial peak, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to refer to it as just that initial peak of overconfidence. Now, what I have come to believe is that you can plot the MCU Peter Parker's character arc onto this graph, showing how he grows and comes into his own as a hero. Starting with his first appearance in Captain America: Civil War, Peter starts his journey at the beginning of the graph, his confidence and experience being low. We can see this when he first meets Tony. He's resistant to go with Tony to Germany, giving excuses like, "I've got homework and I can't just drop out of school." Of course, Tony does convince him to go, and during the fight at the airport, we see Peter's confidence slowly increasing. This is evidenced when he says, "I'm not done, after being knocked down by Ant-Man. Spider-Man: Homecoming shows Peter at the peak of overconfidence. Early on in the movie, when we see Peter getting ready to go out on patrol for the first time, he tells Delmar that school is boring and he has better things to do. Once he's suited up and on patrol, we can see that his web swinging is rough and jerky. At one point, he even lands on his face. This shows how inexperienced he really is. Yet Peter continues to insist that he is ready for more than this, as he says while having Ned disable the suit's training wheels protocol.
Just again treating me like a kid all the time.
And then after the disaster on the Staten Island ferry, when Peter is being chewed out by Tony, we get the first signs of imposter syndrome within Peter. After Tony asks for the suit back, Peter lets out a cry of, "But I'm nothing without this suit," showing that he has started attributing his success to external factors and not his own ability. Then once Peter confronts Vulture and gets a building dropped on him, he finally realizes how outmatched he is. We see him struggling and pleading for help, asking for someone to give him some assistance, showing that while his experience is growing, he's losing confidence. Going into Avengers: Infinity War, Peter stays fairly on the decline in confidence. He's immediately less arrogant in justifying his presence on the ship. Rather than insisting he's ready for more, he simply says,
"You can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood."
And in a heartbreaking moment when Peter gets dusted, he apologizes to Tony, as if there was something more he could have done. If only he had had more experience, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And then in Endgame, during the Battle of Earth, Peter readily asks for help when he is overwhelmed by Thanos' Outriders, showing more growth and experience. But as Tony is dying after using the Infinity Stones, Peter once again apologizes, as if saying if he were better, maybe this could have been prevented. Spider-Man: Far From Home shows Peter at his lowest. He's lost Tony, and everyone around him is expecting him to know what to do. During the interview at the fundraiser, people are asking Peter if he's the head Avenger and what's going to happen if aliens come back. Peter replies by asking if anyone has any neighborhood questions. When one of the reporters asks how it feels to take over for Tony, Peter panics and runs out. After Fury finally gets in contact with Peter and explains the mission he wants help with, Peter tries to get Fury to choose someone else for this mission, and we get this wonderful exchange.
I mean, I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, sir.
Bitch, please, you've been to space.
And Fury is right. Peter has plenty of experience now, certainly enough to fight some elemental monsters. Mysterio's illusion sequence is where things get really dark for Peter. Mysterio is reinforcing Peter's insecurities, calling him just a scared little kid and insinuating that he knows nothing about being a hero. But the biggest blow comes when Mysterio says,
"If you were good enough, maybe Tony would still be alive,"
reinforcing something Peter already believes about Tony's death. Peter finally breaks on the plane with Happy. He knows he's messed up. He knows he made mistakes. Before he finally says,
"The whole world is asking who's going to be the next Iron Man. I don't know if that's me, Happy. I'm not Iron Man."
Happy comes back by telling Peter he's right. He isn't Iron Man, before going on to say that Tony was a mess and second-guessed every decision he made. This shows Peter that he isn't alone in feeling this way. If Tony Stark was filled with anxiety and doubts but was still able to be a great hero, what's to stop Peter from doing the same? Finally, with the support of Happy and his friends, Peter is able to face down Mysterio and trust his instincts to guide him, fully acknowledging,
You can't trick me anymore.
in this moment, Peter isn't just telling this to Mysterio, but himself as well. He knows his own ability now, and he knows he'll be okay. Back in New York, when we see Peter web swinging at the end of the movie, the movements are smooth and confident. Peter has finally come into his own as a hero and knows his successes are from himself. Finding this character progression has been really meaningful to me. I've struggled with imposter syndrome myself, and I know I'm not the only one. Imposter syndrome can be debilitating if left unchecked. When I wasn't taking care of myself mentally, my imposter syndrome, depression, and anxiety all fed into one another until I just couldn't take it anymore. I stopped going to my classes and doing my assignments. I spent my days sitting in bed mindlessly watching YouTube videos, and it wasn't until I finally acknowledged this as a problem that I started getting better. Knowing I wasn't alone in feeling this way was a big help. And from there, I was able to find friends to help support me, and I was able to feel more motivated and more confident in my own abilities. I want to end this video by saying, for those watching who might feel like an imposter, know that you are not alone. Odds are your peers and colleagues are experiencing these same exact feelings. I know it can be scary, to the point where you're paralyzed into inaction. I know you probably feel overwhelmed and underqualified, but also know that we all feel that way. We're all scared and overwhelmed and unprepared for what life is going to throw at us. But as long as we all support each other, we can achieve great things. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, why not subscribe and maybe check out some of my other videos. If I know my directions right, maybe over here or over here, somewhere on the screen, there should be another video where I talk about Spider-Man. So if you like this one, maybe check that one out.